Let's now move away from some of the politics of sports and sports, which, we don't do too often, but we did do today. At least we're not talking about the weather much. And let's talk to Steve Feldman, who is the executive director of the Greater Philadelphia chapter of Zionist Organization of America, and talk about some issues going on with Israel. Fortunately, nothing too breaking right now, because that often means bad things when Israel is concerned. But Steve, thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me on your show, Adam. I appreciate it.
Okay, so there is an issue, a long-term issue involving textbooks, and you wanted to share some information about that with listeners. So,
yes, thank you. It's the beginning of a new school year. I guess school's back maybe the second week in most places, maybe some places 3 weeks, and there's a lot of misinformation and outright lies that are being fed to young Americans about Israel, about Jewry, about the Middle East, and unless parents or grandparents or aunts and uncles, whomever it may be, is vigilant and really takes the time to look through the books and supplementary materials that kids are assigned, their kids could be sitting in a classroom or doing homework and be given information that really plays into the hands of the indoctrination and propaganda of not only Israel's enemies, but America's enemies, and really enemies of the facts. Facts are facts, and people try to distort the facts, and they're really enemies of truth and the facts that would try to do this.
Yeah, can you take us from the beginning here? Like, who's involved, what school districts, to the extent you can say names and what the examples are, I would be appreciative.
Sure. So I have in my hand a textbook that may still be used, but I know it was used in Philadelphia schools, 9th grade world history, at least as recently as 2 years ago. Again, it may still be used. It's called World History, Patterns of Interaction. And if it's okay with you, I'm going to read a paragraph.
Sure.
So the heading is the Kingdom of Israel. Canaan, the land of the Hebrews, Canaan, the land that the Hebrews believed had been promised them by God, combined largely harsh features such as arid desert, rocky wilderness, grassy hills, and the dry, hot valley of the Jordan River. Water was never plentiful. Even the numerous limestone formations soaked up any excess rainfall. After first settling in the south-central area of ancient Palestine, the Hebrews expanded south and north.
Let's stop there. Now, people may not realize there was no region called Palestine until the Roman Empire. Much later, they purposely used the term, and correct me if I'm wrong about anything there, Steve.
No, you're right.
Because of the Philistines.
It gets into some of the early kings, and it identifies them as kings of Palestine.
No, really?
King Saul, King David, established a kingdom in ancient Palestine.
No,
so it's
ironically, because King David fought the Philistines, from where the Romans made up the term Palestine to de-Judaize
it. Interchanges here, when it talks about King David and King Saul, it does interchange Philistines with Palestine. But again, the idea, and it's very intentional, I believe, is to confuse young people,
right,
and make them think that the Palestinian Arabs, which is a recent invention, are
right,
the same people as the ancient biblical Philistines.
Yep, and I should point out that the Arabs at that time lived, shockingly enough, in the Arabian Peninsula. That's where the Arabs were, and this was long before Islam and the conquests. The Arabs lived in Arabia.
On this page alone, I'm just skimming through it.
Well, let me just finish that thought, Steve. I was just going to say, the Philistines were basically related to the Phoenicians, who were a Mediterranean people, not an Arabic people, if I'm not mistaken.
So on this page, I'm just kind of skimming through as I'm talking to you. There's at least 3 references to ancient Palestine. So, what anybody's would conclude, especially somebody young, perhaps not as knowledgeable. These people have been there forever, the Palestinians, and it's the Jews who were the colonialists and colonizers and invaders and things like that. So it's turning everything upside down.
Uh-huh.
So it's so important. We who are in the Israel advocacy business focus on the media, the news media, and their lies and distortions. And here you've got kids, and this is Philadelphia we're talking about is a public school where, you have to go. There are some homeschooling and charter schools and things like that, but you're kind of forced to have this information put at you. And again, I'm sure this textbook is used beyond Philadelphia.
Yeah.
So it's a problem, and unless parents or grandparents, other family members go through these things and look. I don't know what else is in there. I focus on Israel.
Right.
So I don't know what other lies and misinformation about a whole range of possible topics. It's a world history book. Could be in here. So A, people have to look through these things and find them. And B, you have to go to the school board or a school principal. If you're in a smaller town, it's different. You can probably write directly to a principal or something and protest about this. Because if you had a textbook, if your kid's math textbook said 2 and 2 equal 8,
right,
you'd say, wait a minute, why are you teaching my kid that 2 and 2 equal 8? It's 4. Everybody knows that. Or if you had a science textbook that, there's no such thing as gravity, or
right,
the Earth is flat, or anything, you and your listeners get the idea. People wouldn't put up with that misinformation and lies. Why do we put up with this misinformation and lies?
Because I guess they hope that, well, it's just those Jews making waves, extremists are doing this, and it's embarrassing for the kids whose parents are involved because, why do you have to make a scene, Dad? But that's...
Because facts matter.
Yeah, no. I'm saying that's how it operates.
Facts. I'm sorry, say again, Adam?
That's how the system operates, There's so much by the people in the education industry taking advantage of the people who are represented by their school boards. The school boards may or may not be that effective, and they have an agenda. And the teachers' unions, of course, are very tied to the left in a lot of cases.
Exactly.
And the left is very tied to anti-Israel causes in a lot of cases.
But sometimes I don't want to sound trite and cliché, but sometimes one person can make a difference.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
If a parent or grandparent, whomever it may be, points this out, it might make a difference. There was just after the 9/11 incident happened, and we just had the anniversary of the day, of course, but. I live in Philadelphia, work in Philadelphia, so I focus on that. The school district had given these binders full of information to every classroom. The information was supplied by Georgetown University's Islamic Center, which is notoriously bad. Yeah. And we, ZOA, met with the school board president at the time. Long story short, we got these binders all recalled because the information was bad. There was some hateful stuff in there, and so a person, an organization, what have you, a group of parents can make a difference. So the first part is to look and see if these things are there. That's obviously the first part, and then to decide what you want to do. I mean, there are situations where it is dangerous to make this an issue because a grade can affect somebody's career. Mm-hmm. So I think people do have to pick their situation, but if you feel comfortable and if you can get some other parents, grandparents, again, whatever the case may be, to join in with you, the old safety in numbers adage, I think people should report this.
And it doesn't have to be parents doing it either. Often it's better to have someone in front who's merely a taxpayer or living in the district who doesn't have as much to lose as a parent of a kid who's in the class.
You're absolutely right. I mean, there's issues of standing and things like that, and I think they would probably take it more seriously from a parent, but you're absolutely right. It does not have to be a parent. And actually, there's somebody who I know locally who's been fighting with one of the suburban districts about some of the stuff they're doing. He used to have a kid in the school in the district and no longer does. Oh. So, it doesn't have to be someone who's got a kid in the school right now.
Now, do you have some resources at the ZOA website? Actually, give people information if they want to find out more, Steve.
Thank you. We actually have what we've called a textbook survey form. Uh-huh. We have been delinquent in loading this particular thing on our website, but we do have a website that is Philly, PHILLY, .ZOA.org, and one of the tabs in there is for different resource materials. We do have a lot of fact sheets and information, and I promise in the next couple of days we'll get this textbook form loaded up there in PDF form, and people can click on it and download it and print it out and send it to us, or if you're listening from somewhere else in the country, to our national ZOA office or regional ZOA offices. There's a list of them on our national organization's website, which is ZOA.org, and we'll try to look into it if you find something.
Yeah, and how do people get in contact with you or the Philadelphia ZOA or the national ZOA in general? What's the best way to do it?
The best way is probably for us by email in Philadelphia. It's office, the word office, at ZOAPHILLY.org. At ZOA.org, the website, you can get contact information there. And I give out their national number. It's 212-481-1500.
And you are active on Facebook, but Steve Feldman is not the most uncommon name, so you better put in Philadelphia or ZOA if you want to find this Steve Feldman, because there must be hundreds, thousands of you around the country.
There's a lot of us, yeah.
Yeah, it's not
But long before there was cloning, someone figured out a way to make a lot of Steve Feldman.
Yeah, they have to do a little more hard work if they want to find you on Facebook. All right, Steve, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me on.
Talk to you soon. Bye.